AI is no different actually from where finance evolved and where legal evolved and where tech also evolved. It is a tool basically for us. So the better we know of the tool, the better we can govern. But it doesn't mean that all board members need to know AI, need to know coding, for example. They don't need to, but they need to understand and have a good appreciation of it enough so that they can actually govern it effectively and ask the questions and maybe throw the curveball, that management may not see. An informed director also will be a more useful director.
Welcome to the pre-read.
Just like the slides you get before a big meeting, the pre-read prepares you, CFOs, and other executives for the next big thing. It's the global podcast where finance, sustainability, audit, and risk teams come together in the C-suite.
If you're making decisions at scale or need to understand the leaders who are, you're in the right place. This is the pre-read brought to you by Workiva. I'm Steve Soder, accounting enthusiast and Diet Coke aficionado.
And I'm Alyssa Zucker, sustainability nerd and equal opportunist caffeine addict. The traditional boundaries of governance, risk management, and oversight are blurring, leaving many executives and boards scrambling for a playbook that doesn't exist yet.
Today, we're tackling this challenge from two distinct angles, the high-level boardroom governance perspective and the operational risk frontline.
First, I sit down with Dr. Chong Yoke Sin, chair of the SES AI Ethics and Governance Council, who essentially built Singapore's national health IT infrastructure and sits on several boards across financial services, property, and healthcare. Here's what stood out to me. First, directors don't need to know how to code, but they do need enough AI fluency to ask questions that management isn't asking themselves. Number two, continuous AI monitoring is disrupting traditional sampling-based controls. Layering AI on old manual processes won't cut it. And third, trust and curiosity aren't soft skills. They're governance infrastructure. And without them, no framework actually works.
Well, with that, let's hear your conversation with Dr. Chong.
This is quite an impressive resume. You have really built Singapore's national health IT infrastructure. You chair the SES AI Ethics and Governance Council, and you sit on boards across financial services, property, and healthcare. And that's a pretty rare combination of both having built these systems and now being accountable for governing them. And so what does that vantage point tell you about where AI governance is actually failing at the board level today?
Well, to answer directly, I think where it's failing is really a lack of knowledge. Knowing enough of AI, for example, allows you to ask the pertinent questions. And although AI is supposed to facilitate, right, and for example, simplify complex work, which it does very well, I think the key for people who are governing it and the people means the boards who are actually looking to ensure that organizations are using it correctly must be assured that the processes are correct. And AI is no different actually from where finance evolved and where legal evolved and where tech also evolved. It is a tool basically for us. And the best governance of the tool is the human. So the better we know of the tool, the better we can govern. But it doesn't mean that all board members need to know AI, need to know coding, for example. They don't need to, but they need to understand and have a good appreciation of it enough so that they can actually govern it effectively and ask the questions and maybe throw the curveball, that management may not see. Because that, you see, an informed director also will be a more useful director to the organization and to management. Mm-hmm. And that's my, strong belief.
As I'm hearing you say this, it's actually connecting a dot for me. And I didn't tell you this, but my background is sustainability. And as I'm hearing your perspective here on AI and boards' kind of responsibility for governing it, it's the same perspective as sustainability. It's a new domain, right? And so you don't have to be an incredible domain expert, but I think you need to, from the board perspective, understand the impact to the business and the risk to the business, so that, to your point, you can ask the tough questions and really understand and It's almost like, we spend so much time talking about the intersection of sustainability and financial impact. And AI, it's just kind of like the newest thing to think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it follows the same pattern.
Yes.
Now, there's a growing argument that fiduciary responsibility now extends to AI, and that directors are actually personally accountable for ensuring that the AI decisions are explainable, auditable, and built on trust and trusted data. From your perspective, how much of the board community has actually internalized that versus treating AI more as a management problem?
Board directors need to be involved in the organization to be able to ask the right question and to appreciate what management or the operational staff have to go through in order to get to where we want the organization to be. So I think having that empathy, I think, is very key, because you have to actually balance confidence and compliance, basically. And I think where boards are today, I think more and more boards are including directors with AI background, with or cybersecurity background into their fold, and that helps. But at the same time, too, I think boards, I think, at least I know from the SID perspective, directors are intentionally getting trained in these areas of AI and cybersecurity and sustainability, because then only then can we be actually useful and can we ask the pertinent questions and know of the answers as well. And I think more importantly, know about what the external environment is about, so that you know how to calibrate and know how to actually bring the organization to the next level and know also what it takes to get there. I think this whole empathy with management and staff is very key, because otherwise, if you lose that trust within, then it is a culture that you do not want. What you want is a real good culture of mutual trust, dignity, and that involves both sides, management and board directors, to know of one another's challenges, right, and capabilities.
Yeah. It's actually, I find it really interesting that your perspective on all of this is so tied to, you're saying, empathy, like emotional intelligence, empathy, and those aren't maybe typically words that we use when we're talking about assurance or governance of processes. But I think that's a really interesting kind of human-centric point. At the end of the day, every company is figuring this out as they go. There's literally no guidebook. There's no rule book. There's no framework that governs how you manage AI, how you incorporate it into your business strategy, right? And so almost relying on our human empathy, to your point, our ability to kind of think curiously about it, connect it to the experience that we do have, it really actually humanizes the board in a way.
You said it very correctly. Because in any undertaking that we do, the first path may not bear fruit or bear success, right? And you've got to have enough of that trust between the board and management to know how to pivot. And even if it's a question of capability, right? If you have that trust, then you could get around that by, being more capable, by actually increasing your skill set in that area. So I think successful organizations are usually built on good trust between the people who actually are responsible for producing the outcome. And that actually includes both management and board.
Yeah. Now, this next question, you spoke about this on your panel, and so I'm hoping you can reiterate it for our pre-read audience here. But now that AI systems can essentially continuously monitor every transaction across an enterprise, not just the distinct or discrete sampling of data, that's really blurring the line between what's a preventable or preventative control versus a detectable one and a detective one. And it really puts pressure on that kind of traditional 3 lines of defense model. So how should boards be rethinking oversight architecture when the very controls themselves are now becoming automated?
Very good question as well. So the only way I think that can happen, because we have a tool now at hand, which is more powerful than what was available in the past. So with a good, intelligent tool, we should harness it. And basically, we should work with what the tool can alert us about. Well, in the past, it was about sampling, right? So we had to purposefully, organize, events and audit, audit events so that we can actually do the testing and the testing of the available processes. But right now, with a tool such as AI, and without having to code specifically for the outcomes, I think that is the beauty of AI. We could actually harness it, right, to tell us in which area is the process deficient. We can harness it to tell us, like, can we make a more efficient flow of information, or get rid of certain paths which are redundant, actually, because with AI you can discover various information at source. So I think a change of mindset is required. We can no longer layer AI on top of the existing manual processes that we have. But we should be bold enough, which goes back to my point of trust between management and board, to actually deploy that resource, could be financial and otherwise, as well as breaking down barriers and changing job roles as well. So we need to do all that in order to harness what AI can provide for us. Otherwise, we'll be always stuck with this problem of having to govern AI. We're always talking about the man in the loop, human in the loop, etc., just because we didn't change the fundamental process that AI allows us to do so. So I think this change of mindset is very key, and the people who actually can do that will win. Just as the industries that have come before us, like for example, the biomedical industry has changed so much. And let's say, for example, in the past, right? I mean, I came from this background of organic chemistry, so we had to actually test all our experiments physically, And then if it was not the right candidate, we throw it away. That would be months or maybe years, of throwaway effort. But with AI now, you could do the simulation. It's so marvelous. And that's what the pharmaceutical companies are doing, right? You could just replace the many years of effort with just hours of simulation. So being bold enough to do that and having that trust of staff and management as well as the board is very key to get that outcome.
I loved the way that you framed it with those questions because, and to your point, human in the loop, how you're using AI as a tool, you're asking questions. Is there a deficiency? Is there a more efficient way that we could be doing this? Is there a breakdown somewhere? Right. And those are all questions that you're asking AI, and then you're listening to the answers and you're interpreting them and you're distilling them and making decisions, not just off of what the AI has told you, but of what your judgment of what that actually means, what the impact of it is.
Right. And that requires curiosity level, right? And curiosity can only thrive when there's trust. Because otherwise, staff will not be able to do that. They won't be able to ask the right questions because they may be afraid that it shows up, their incapability and so on. But having that, AI will show up many things. You will find, it will uncover many deficiencies. And it may even uncover things that we thought was the perfect process, but it's actually not required now with AI. So the ability, all right, and the courage to do that and trust to do that is very key. And we shouldn't have that. I personally feel we shouldn't have that big divide between the board and management and staff. Basically, all three needs to work even closer together because you facilitated with a tool that allows for that.
Yeah. I want to shift for a moment to the reality of geopolitical fragmentation and how that's creating some real complexity for AI governance when you think of data flows, model provenance, regulatory expectations that are different across those different jurisdictions. And so for a board overseeing a company that operates across borders, what does governing AI responsibility look like in that environment?
Well, if you're a multinational or you have operations that cross different boundaries, geopolitical boundaries, and I think that geopolitical boundaries are all created by people. There should not be. I think humankind would be much better without these barriers. But okay, we have these barriers that we need to govern for. So I think the key is to be aware and to know the flow of information, and to have that. Of course, the flow of information will somewhat be curtailed because of the boundaries, but these boundaries have to be respected because of the jurisdictions that we operate in. And the key, I actually sit on some boards that actually have oversight across countries. The key is actually you have a same board that governs across countries. So it's very key that various countries know or have a common framework to work on. But at the same time, that common framework needs to be able to be agile to actually conform to the local jurisdiction. So while all that needs to be in place, I think the key is the sentinel, right? If there is a problem occurring in any country, it could be cybersecurity, that's one aspect, or it could be an AI that goes incorrectly, then the whole organization needs to be aware, all right? And there needs to be this trust of people to be able to receive, right, the guidance and to implement it. So we shouldn't have this concept of blame, looking for the point of blame, but to always look for the point of remediation, correction, of saving, the whole system for the good of the company. So regardless of where the company operates, because you can't define or you can't control, which jurisdiction that comes, which geopolitical situation, right? You can't control the changes of those situations, but you can control what the internal organization, right, can comply with in terms of your internal culture, your internal process, and yet, comply with the jurisdictions at hand.
Yeah. Now, just to end here, you've spent your career at the intersection, as we mentioned, but of technology, governance, and public accountability. If you had to identify the single most important thing that the board needs to get right about AI in the next 12 months, what would that one thing be?
Well, in the next 12 months, I would say curiosity. Yeah. Curiosity must be actually the mainstay of every organization, every person, right? Because if you have a curious mindset, you can accept change. You will be able to accept guidance, as well as have that urge to, right things that go wrong, and not actually flog a person, but deal with the problem at hand. And then once you have that, I think the benefits are tremendous for the organization.
Yeah, it's actually reminding me of kind of this narrative. What we're really talking about is just better business insights. And so the curious company that values those insights and is always iterating and evolving and changing to that point, you don't want to be static. You don't want to be the company tomorrow that you were yesterday. Yeah. The whole point is that you need to evolve. And so I love how you have framed this whole dialogue in terms of these human elements and emotional intelligence and empathy and curiosity and trust, because that's how you really drive progress. I think that's maybe one of the, there's obviously some challenges with AI, but I think that's maybe one of the strongest and most compelling arguments to it is driving growth and evolution and progress in terms of what we can do.
Yeah, because AI is what it is today, in this form. AI will evolve. We're going to have better technology, better solutions, right? And unless we're curious, we will never develop those solutions, let alone adopt them.
Yeah, the solutions will only come from the questions we ask, right? That's us steering the AI towards the outcomes that we need to find as a society.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what keeps humans improving.
Picture this. It's 7 p.m. in the state finance office. The motion sensor lights just dimmed, and you're staring at a revenue figure in the ACFR that doesn't match the governor's briefing. You ask your team where that number came from, and suddenly everyone is frantically digging through the files named final_v2 and actual_final_v7. If that sounds like your Tuesday night, you aren't alone. Did you know that 45% of financial leaders say automating data validation is their top priority for 2026? The truth is, legacy spreadsheets weren't built to be the infrastructure for statewide reporting. They create a black box of disconnected data that leads to audit findings and major burnout. That's why I want to recommend Workiva's new government reporting guide. It's the bridge between manual chaos and a modernized, transparent reporting environment. It shows you how to use connected data and secure AI to answer, "Where did you get that number?" in seconds, not days. Stop hunting through spreadsheets and start leading with confidence. Download the guide today at workiva.com/PR-futureproof. That's WORKIVA.com/PR-futureproof.
It's fascinating how Dr. Chong brings everything back to culture, curiosity, and trust. But how do you take that philosophical boardroom mandate and actually operationalize it inside a fast-moving business?
And to explore that, Steve, you sat down with Heather Holding, Chief Risk Officer at Best Egg. Heather has built risk programs at some of the biggest names in banking and fintech, and she views risk management through a completely different lens, not as an inhibitor, but as a strategic business enabler. Steve, what leapt out to you from your sit down with Heather?
Well, first, good risk management doesn't slow a business down. It gives leadership the confidence they need to move faster. Second, modern risk leaders like Heather don't just set ceilings. Instead, they look for where the organization is playing it too safe and then maybe leaving growth on the table. Third was getting a team comfortable with AI starts with low stakes experiments. So think like organizing a closet, not optimizing a credit model. And last, siloed data and fragmented data systems really do carry hidden costs. Connected visibility is what makes clean data in actually achievable, which then makes AI more useful on the way out.
Well, with that, let's go to Steve's chat with Heather Holding.
You have built risk programs at some of the biggest names in banking and fintech. And one of the things that I know about you is that your philosophy about like risk in these programs is that it's really an enabler for the business. But I think most people would think of it as the opposite, like this is something that's slowing us down or something that's going to stop us. Tell us a little bit about where that philosophy came from and maybe what you do to try to overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. This has definitely been a theme with any type of risk or control role out there. The business is always like, you're slowing us down by implementing all of these controls and you're not helping us. You're making things move slower. I heard this a lot throughout my entire career, especially working at some of the larger financial institutions. And in these roles, I really took that step back to understand, why are my business partners saying that? And what can I do to show up as a better business person to help them while maintaining control and making sure that we're doing things in a way that is compliant and to the regulations. So one of the things that I've done is really taken that step back to understand what drives them at the end of the day and understanding how to communicate what by introducing controls and how they'll actually enable them and actually bring speed to market. I've also really have taken that step back too to understand how I need to portray risk and controls and how I need to educate them and how they work and what are some ways that we can actually make things go quicker. And I think that's part of my experience just over time working at some of these larger institutions. And what really did it for me was when I moved into the fintech world, I didn't have a lot of those constraints that I would typically have at a larger organization. Yes, we had to be compliant, we had to follow the rules, but we could look at things in a different lens. Just because it was done, a certain way at a large institution doesn't mean that you can't still operate and control doing it differently. So taking that step back, reanalyzing the programs and how they're set up and doing it in a way where you can enable the business to move faster. One of the things that I really pride myself in doing is when I rolled out risk appetite at Best Egg, one of the things that we looked at was of course, there's always limits. There's credit limits. You can't exceed thresholds, those types of things. But what if we're actually not taking enough risk? And that was one of the things that I instituted at Best Egg was, okay, yes, we have the controls for the limits if you're doing too much, but what if you're not doing enough? And that really kind of changed the game, and really enabled the trust of my business partners and making risk management a lot more effective,
Well,
meaningful as a driver for the business.
and I love that you describe it that way, because 3 or 4 times in your answer, you've
Yeah.
actually referenced speed and moving here
Yes.
quickly. I've got someone on our team, and he often describes like, hey, what's the purpose of brakes on a bike?
Yep.
And he's like, well, most people would say it's so that you could stop.
Yeah.
He's like, but actually brakes on the bike mean that you can go faster
Yeah.
because now you're able to do it with control. So
Correct.
your characterization of it, like, well, actually, maybe we're not taking enough risk. I think that would resonate with a lot of people.
Yes. And there's actually been a number of times where, I've been at Best Day and some other companies that I've been at where we weren't doing that. And that was kind of a aha moment for a lot of our executive leaders that, oh, well, maybe I'm looking at this completely the wrong way, and educating them, with that process and how we should be looking at our risk management programs differently.
Well, you have a background that may be a little bit different in behavioral science.
Yes.
So I would love to maybe hear a little bit about how that has influenced your philosophy about AI specifically. Obviously, a very big topic for everybody, of course, but
Yeah.
certainly for risk professionals.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got into behavioral science, frankly, just because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I always been a people person and really wanted to understand like dynamics of people and how people work, what makes them tick. And I think that's actually really helped me a lot in my career because I can take that step back and understand someone else's position in a completely different role and look at things through a different lens. And that has really enabled my growth and how I go about my day to day. I run a series called AI with Heather. I don't know if you've seen it, which is, you wouldn't hear that from a risk person, right? Like, what kind of risk person runs an AI channel? I do.
I love it.
But I've been able to do things like that because I can take that step back and look at things through a different lens and understand different perspectives. And that's really made me successful and really allowed me permission to do other things outside of my typical risk role, but do it in a controlled way.
Honestly, what I love that is that it's giving you a platform, a reason to begin and to have that conversation. And hopefully, I would assume it's giving other people a reason to
Yeah.
be doing that as well. Because I feel like we're all at this point where, all right, my company's probably telling me to adopt it. There's a lot of pressure there. But what about me personally? Not necessarily my personal life. That might be a part of it or not. But
Yeah.
am I thinking about that like in the context of my job? Am I like looking for opportunities? And I feel like that's a fairly charged issue right now for a lot of
It is.
reasons.
Yeah. And I know with my own team, one of the things that I did to even just get us comfortable with AI, I had to be the leader in that sense and show them that you can use this in a risk management role and you can use it in a controlled way. And one of the first things that we did was we went through some real fun, real life examples of taking a picture of your closet and help me organize my closet. Or let's copy this article and put it into some bullet points. And we just did this fun, basic scenarios to get the team comfortable. And now my whole risk management team uses AI every single day.
Nice.
And it's really helped them get comfortable with just trying things and experimenting. And obviously not putting, confidential information and all that in the tool, but there are ways that you can use it to, move faster and make decisions and enable you to go faster.
Shifting gears just a little bit, I've also heard you talk in the past about the importance of connecting systems, connecting data, connecting
Yes.
teams. Certainly an important component for like a holistic risk perspective.
Yes.
I wonder for organizations who haven't done that, and every organization's probably at a differing level of that, but what do you think that disconnected and fragmented state is costing businesses in real terms that maybe they might not be thinking of?
Yeah, it's costing them a lot. And that's time, it's costing them people, understanding what the risks are. If you have things siloed like that, you're going to have to call this person for this thing, this person for that thing, this person for that thing. And then you're probably going to have to do the cycle all over again, because once you go through the three, you're going to have to go back to the three. So it really slows things down. And it also prevents you from making good decisions. You really need to see the whole landscape to really enable your decision making.
Well, and it's so interesting to think about people's natural hesitancy about AI, because on the one hand, I might be thinking, well, could this put me in jeopardy of my job? Or could this make me, a little more rusty on my skills because I'm kind of like offloading some of that. At the same time, I would expect nothing less than being like fully connected on my phone or my device, right? And so it's like, well, how do we kind of reconcile those two things?
Yeah, it's tough. I think folks need to get comfortable with using the technology. I think for leaders, it's important for us leaders to lean into the technology, lean into data, lean into AI as much as we can, and learn as much we can and how it can help us in our day to day. I mean, I look at AI right now. I don't think AI is going to replace any of our jobs right now. It's something where we do need to embrace it and, look into what it can actually do for us and help us. I mean, it's kind of like Google 20 years ago when, Google was a thing. I mean, this is just that next thing.
Yeah. Well, I love, and you've said it a couple of different times about the importance of leaders leaning in. I've certainly observed that in my work, where when you see leadership doing it, that tends to draw you in, as opposed to, hey, you guys really need to do this, but you don't see me using it at all. So I love that. Just one last question. From your risk perspective, what's it going to take for us to be able to trust AI? You talked just a second ago, sometimes it gives you a crazy answer. I've certainly experienced that myself. How do we get to the point where we can really lean on it for critical, impacting decisions?
Yeah, I think it's got a long way to go. I think it's a matter of your clean data in. I think that's a big part of it. And, making sure that the inputs that you're putting in there are strong and detailed. So the inputs coming out are in a way that you can use it and leverage it. And you always have to test. You always have to make sure that it's right. Like, quality check.
Thank you again to our guests, Dr. Chong and Heather Holding, and thank you for listening.
This has been The Pre-Read, brought to you by Workiva, the world's only unified platform for financial reporting, sustainability, audit, and risk.
We've got more insights and hot takes coming your way, so be sure to follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your edge.
If you liked the show, leave a review. Send it to someone you love, or just shout it out on your next team call.
We'll see you next time, and until then, go lead it like you mean it.
I'm Melissa Zucker, and that's Steve Soder. Our lead producer is Mike Ravanio, with production support from Shuyi Tan and audio engineering by Drew Hayes and Faith Springer.
Pedro Sousa is our graphic designer. Transcripts are created and edited by Courtney Kimsey. And thanks to our digital and social team, Mike Berg, Katie Carr, and Michael Karnowski.